I still remember the smell of that hospital room. Disinfectant mixed with something else, ... Something heavy. Death, maybe. I don't know, but I'll never forget it. My father was dying, and I was the only one there. Marcus was in court. Important case, he said. Diane was at a medical conference in Boston. Can't cancel, Elena. You understand. Thomas didn't even bother with an excuse. Just sent a text. Keep me posted. So it was just me, holding my father's cold hand, watching his chest rise and fall, slower each time, the machines beeping their countdown. I wasn't supposed to be the one. I was never supposed to be anything in this family. Growing up, I learned early that I was the disappointment. Marcus was the golden boy Harvard law partnership at 32, the son my father actually wanted. Diane was the brilliant one Johns Hopkins, cardiothoracic surgeon, the daughter who made him proud at dinner parties. Thomas took over parts of Dad's business empire, the one who understood money. And me? I became a teacher. Public school, inner city, $28,000 a year. I still remember the look on my father's face when I told him, like I'd slapped him. A teacher? He said, his voice flat. Elena, I didn't pay for your education so you could babysit other people's children. That was 18 years ago. Its disappointment never left his eyes after that. But here's the thing nobody tells you about being the family failure. You stop expecting anything. You stop hoping for approval. And maybe, in some strange way, that sets you free. I visited him every week for the last 3 years, after Mom died. Not because he asked. He never asked. But because the house was too quiet, and he was getting older, and someone needed to check if he was eating. My siblings? They called on holidays. Maybe. Now, watching him take his final breaths, I wondered if he even knew I was there. His eyes were closed. His hand was limp in mine. I wanted to say something meaningful, something that would fix all those years of feeling invisible. But I just whispered, I'm here, Dad. You're not alone. He died at 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. The machines went silent. A nurse came in, checked his pulse, and gave me that practiced, sympathetic look they teach in medical school. I called Marcus first. He answered on the 4th ring. He's gone, I said. Silence. Then, okay, I'll handle the arrangements. You don't need to worry about anything. Like I was a child. Like I hadn't been the one sitting there for 6 hours while our father's life drained away. I called Diane next. She cried as loud, theatrical sobs that sounded almost real. Oh my God, Elena, oh my God, I should have been there. I should have, it's fine, I said, because what else do you say? Thomas didn't answer. He texted back 2 hours later, sorry for your loss. Your loss, not our loss. The funeral was exactly what you'd expect. Expensive. Crowded with business associates who didn't know my father at all but knew his net worth. My siblings played their parts perfectly. The grieving, successful children, elegant in their designer black, accepting condolences with practiced grace. I stood to the side in my J.C. Penney dress, feeling like a ghost at my own father's funeral. And maybe that's exactly what I was. The forgotten daughter. The one who didn't matter. But I didn't know yet. None of us did that my father had been planning something. Something that would change everything. The real story hadn't even started. If this hit close to home, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, ... like this video, let me know I'm not alone in this feeling. The week after the funeral felt like living underwater. Everything was muffled, distant, slow. I went back to work on Monday. What else was I supposed to do? My students needed me, and honestly, I needed them too. Kids don't let you drown in your own grief. They ask questions, they need help with fractions, they spill juice boxes and cry over playground drama. Normal life. That's what I needed. But my phone kept buzzing. Family group chat. The one I was added to, but rarely spoke in. Marcus, a state attorney, scheduled for Friday, 2 p.m. Everyone needs to be there. Diane, finally. This process has been exhausting, Thomas. Hope it doesn't take long. I have meetings. I stared at those messages. Not one of them mentioned Dad. Not one word about missing him, about the loss, about grief. Just business. I typed and deleted a response 3 times before finally sending, "I'll be there." Nobody acknowledged it. Friday came faster than I wanted. I stood in front of my closet that morning, staring at my limited options. My siblings would show up in their power suits and designer watches. I had a navy blazer I'd bought on clearance 4 years ago, and a pair of black pants that were slightly too short. It shouldn't have mattered, but it did. The law office was in the nice part of downtown, all glass and marble, the kind of place where the receptionist's outfit probably cost more than my monthly rent. My siblings were already there when I arrived, sitting in the waiting area like they owned it. Marcus looked up from his phone. "You're late." I checked my watch. "It's 1:58. "Still late," Diane muttered, not looking up from her own phone. Thomas didn't even acknowledge me. I sat in the chair furthest from them and waited. My heart was pounding, though I didn't know why. What did I have to be nervous about? I wasn't expecting anything. I'd stopped expecting things from this family a long time ago. At exactly 2 p.m., a tall man in an expensive suit emerged. The Carter family? "Please, come in." We filed into a conference room that smelled like leather and old money. The attorney, Mr. Whitmore, sat at the head of a massive table. He had that look, the one that said he'd done this 1,000 times, delivered news both good and devastating, and learned not to show emotion either way. "First, my condolences on the loss of your father," he began, opening a thick folder. Robert Carter was a remarkable man and a valued client for over 30 years. Marcus nodded like he was accepting an award. Diane dabbed at her eyes with the tissue she'd pulled from her purse. Thomas checked his watch. And me? I just sat there feeling like an intruder at someone else's reading. "Now, let's proceed with the last will and testament," Mr. Whitmore said, adjusting his glasses. "I'll summarize the primary provisions." He started with the business assets. 17 commercial properties, 3 operational businesses, investment portfolios, stock holdings. The numbers were staggering. I'd known my father was wealthy, but hearing it all laid out was something else. $8 million, maybe more. "To my son, Marcus Andrew Carter," Mr. Whitmore read, "I bequeath 35% ownership of Carter Enterprises, including all associated holdings, as well as the primary residence at 1847 Oakmont Drive." Marcus leaned back in his chair, satisfied. "Of course." "To my daughter, Diane Patricia Carter, I bequeath 35% ownership of Carter Enterprises and all commercial real estate properties held under Carter Property Holdings, LLC." Diane actually smiled. A small, victorious smile that made my stomach turn. "To my son, Thomas Richard Carter, I bequeath the remaining 30% of Carter Enterprises and the complete investment portfolio managed by Whitmore Financial Group." Thomas nodded once. "Good." The room felt smaller suddenly, hotter. I realized what was happening, what was about to happen, and I wanted to leave before I had to hear it. But I couldn't move. Mr. Whitmore cleared his throat, turned the page. His eyes flicked to me for just a second. Was that pity? Before he continued reading. "To my daughter, Elena Marie Carter, double," quotes. The room went silent. Even my siblings stopped fidgeting. "I leave my gratitude for the time she spent with me in my final years. May she continue to find fulfillment in her chosen path." That was it. No money, no property, no assets, just gratitude. The silence lasted maybe 3 seconds before Diane laughed. Actually laughed. A sharp, cruel sound that cut through the air like glass breaking. "Well," she said, turning to look at me with mock sympathy. "At least he was honest about what you were worth to him." Marcus tried to hide his smirk. Failed. "Gratitude. That's something, Elena." Thomas didn't even look at me. He was already pulling out his phone. probably calculating his net worth. I couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. Every insult, every dismissal, every time I'd been made to feel small and worthless, it all crashed down on me in that moment. My own father, my own blood. I meant nothing. Mr. Whitmore was saying something about trust distributions and tax implications, but I couldn't hear him anymore. There was a ringing in my ears. My face was burning. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Elena," Mr. Whitmore started. But I was already walking toward the door. I heard Diane behind me. "Oh, come on, don't be dramatic." I didn't turn around. I couldn't let them see my face. Couldn't let them see that they'd won. I made it to my car before the tears came. Sat in the driver's seat in an underground parking garage, crying so hard I thought I might throw up. He left me nothing. After everything. After all those visits. All those years of trying, of being there when no one else was. Nothing. I was nothing to him. I'd always been nothing. Have you ever been made to feel worthless by the people who were supposed to love you? Tell me in the comments, ... Because I need to know I'm not crazy for how much this hurt. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't face my empty apartment, couldn't sit in that silence and feel sorry for myself. So I drove, no destination. Just drove through the city as the sun set and the streetlights flickered on one by one. I ended up at a park near the river, the same park where Dad used to take us when we were kids, back before everything became about success and money and who was worth more. I sat on a bench and watched the water. Dark. Cold. Moving forward like nothing had happened. My phone buzzed. Group chat. "Marcus, we need to discuss transition plans for the business. Meeting next Tuesday. Diane, I'll have my attorney review the property documents. Want to make sure everything's clear? Thomas, already scheduled with the financial advisors. This is going to be a smooth process. Not one of them mentioned me, not even to gloat. I was so invisible I wasn't even worth mocking anymore. I turned off my phone and sat there until the park lights came on. Until the cold seeped through my jacket and I couldn't feel my fingers. Until I was sure I'd cried every tear my body could produce. When I finally drove home, it was past midnight. My apartment felt smaller than usual. Darker. The walls seemed to close in on me. I looked around at my life. Secondhand furniture. Textbooks stacked on a wobbly shelf. A framed photo of my students from last year. This was it. This was all I had. All I'd ever have. And maybe my father was right. Maybe I wasn't worth more than gratitude. I called in sick on Monday. First time in 6 years. Sent an email to my principal, turned off my phone, and stayed in bed. I didn't eat, didn't shower. Just lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying that moment in the conference room over and over. At least he was honest about what you were worth to him. Diane's voice, over and over. By Tuesday, I forced myself up, took a shower, made coffee, stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. I'd always known I was the disappointment. But knowing it and having it confirmed in legal documents, in front of witnesses, with a dollar value attached, or rather no dollar value at all, that was different. That was a wound that didn't close. Wednesday, I went back to work. My students noticed immediately. "Miss Carter, are you okay?" Sarah, one of my 5th graders, asked during reading time. "You look sad." I forced a smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired, but kids know. They always know." At lunch, my colleague Jennifer found me in the teacher's lounge. "Elena, I heard about your father. I'm so sorry." She paused. Are you doing okay?" "You seem... I'm fine," I said automatically. She didn't believe me, but she didn't push. What could I say anyway? That my father left me nothing? That my siblings laughed? That I felt like a fool for ever thinking I mattered? The days blurred together. Teaching. Going home. Lying awake at night. Repeat. 2 weeks passed, then 3. My siblings stopped texting the group chat. They were busy dividing their empire, I guess, living their upgraded lives. They didn't need to think about me anymore, and I tried not to think about them. But late at night, when I couldn't sleep, the questions came. The painful ones. The ones that felt like knives. Why wasn't I enough? What did I do wrong? Was it really just because I chose teaching? Because I didn't chase money and status? Because I actually loved something more than a bank account? Or was it deeper than that? Had my father looked at me my entire life and seen... nothing? Just a disappointment who wasn't worth remembering in death. I started avoiding places I might run into people who knew my family. The grocery store near Dad's old neighborhood. The coffee shop Marcus liked. I couldn't handle the questions, the sympathy, or worse, the judgment. Poor Elena. Even her own father didn't think she deserved anything. On a Friday evening, exactly 1 month after the will reading, I sat on my couch with a glass of wine I wasn't drinking and mail I wasn't opening, bills mostly, a flyer for a pizza place, student loan statements that made me want to cry. And then, a different envelope. Thick, cream-colored, expensive paper. My name written in elegant script. No return address. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single card with embossed letterhead. Morrison and Associates, Private Legal Counsel. The message was brief. Dear Ms. Carter, I represent a private matter concerning your late father, Robert Carter. This matter requires your immediate and confidential attention. Please contact my office to schedule an appointment at your earliest convenience. This is separate from the estate proceedings you recently attended. Time sensitive. Please respond within 48 hours. Sincerely, David Morrison, Esq. I read it 3 times. A private matter? Separate from the estate? What could that possibly mean? My first thought was that it was a mistake. Or maybe some final insult to Bill my father left behind that somehow became my responsibility. That would be fitting, wouldn't it? But something in my chest stirred. Something I hadn't felt in weeks. Curiosity. Maybe even hope? No, I pushed that down immediately. Hope was dangerous. Hope was what got me hurt in the first place. But I couldn't stop staring at that card. Couldn't stop wondering, what if I picked up my phone? My finger hovered over the number printed at the bottom of the card. 48 hours, he said. I had nothing to lose. I'd already lost everything that mattered, so I dialed. A woman answered on the second ring. Professional, crisp, Morrison and Associates. Hi, I received a letter, I said, my voice shaking. My name is Elena Carter. I was asked to call Miss Carter. Yes, Mr. Morrison has been expecting your call. Can you come to the office tomorrow? Say 10 a.m. tomorrow? Saturday, yes, I can do that. She gave me an address, downtown, not far from where the will was read. When I hung up, my heart was racing. I told myself not to get excited. This was probably nothing. Probably just some administrative loose end. But as I lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, I couldn't stop thinking about that letter. Private matter, confidential, time sensitive. What did my father do? And why did I feel, for the first time in a month, like maybe, just maybe, I hadn't been forgotten after all? Follow me, because what I'm about to discover, it changes everything. And you need to hear what happened next. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that letter, those words, private matter, confidential. What could it mean? By 5 a.m., I gave up trying. Made coffee, showered, changed outfits 3 times like it mattered what I wore to potentially get my heart broken again. I left my apartment at 8:30 for a 10 a.m. appointment. Sat in my car outside the building for 20 minutes, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe. What if this was nothing? What if it was worse than nothing, some debt, some final disappointment my father left behind with my name on it? But what if it wasn't? I'd forced myself out of the car. The building was older than Mr. Whitmore's glass tower. Brick. Elegant. The kind of place that whispered old money and family secrets. Inside, the receptionist smiled warmly. Ms. Carter? Mr. Morrison is ready for you. 3rd floor, suite 304. The elevator ride felt like falling, my stomach in my throat, my hands trembling. Suite 304 had a heavy wooden door with a brass nameplate. I knocked once, twice. "Come in." The voice was deep, kind somehow. I opened the door. The man behind the desk was maybe 60, with gray hair and sharp eyes that looked like they'd seen everything and judged nothing. He stood immediately, extending his hand. "Ms. Carter, Elena, thank you for coming." His handshake was firm, warm. "Please, sit. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "I'm fine," I lied. I wasn't fine, I was terrified. He sat across from me, and for a moment he just looked at me. Really looked, like he was trying to see something. "I imagine you're confused," he said finally, "and probably anxious. So let me get straight to it." He pulled a manila folder from his desk drawer, thick, heavy. "Your father came to me 3 years ago with very specific instructions. Instructions that were separate from his official estate and not to be disclosed until after the public reading of his will." My mouth went dry. "I don't understand. Your father was a complicated man," Mr. Morrison continued, "but he wasn't a fool. He knew exactly who his children were, what they cared about, what they didn't." He paused, and he knew who actually loved him. Something cracked in my chest, a sound I felt more than heard. "For the last 3 years of his life, your father systematically moved assets out of his primary estate. He created a private trust, offshore accounts, property holdings under shell corporations, all of it legal, all of it deliberate." Mr. Morrison opened the folder, "And all of it ... is yours." The room tilted. "What?" My voice came out as a whisper. He slid a document across the desk, my name at the top, numbers below. So many numbers. 2 million in liquid assets. Another one. 8 million in bonds and diversified investments. A property in Vermont, fully paid, worth approximately $750,000. And a portfolio of stocks that, at current valuation, sits around $450,000. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. That's $5 million. $5.2 million to be precise. Mr. Morrison's expression softened. "Your father left you more than all 3 of your siblings combined." No, this wasn't real. This couldn't be real. But the will? He left me nothing in the will, just gratitude. My voice broke on the word. "Exactly." Mr. Morrison leaned forward. "That was intentional, Elena. He wanted them to reveal themselves. Wanted to see what they'd do, how they'd treat you when they thought you had nothing." He paused. He knew they'd show you who they really were. Tears burned my eyes. Why? Why would he do this? Because he wanted to protect you. Mr. Morrison pulled out another document, handwritten. I recognized the writing instantly. My father's. Shaky. Weak. But unmistakably his. He left you this letter, with strict instructions that you read it here, with me present. He handed it to me. The paper trembled in my hands. I opened it. _ Elena. If you're reading this, then you've already sat through that will reading. You've already heard what I left to your brothers and sister. You've already felt what I needed you to feel. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for the pain. That I needed them to show their true faces, and I needed you to see it clearly. For 3 years, you came to visit me. Every week. Sometimes, twice. You brought soup when I was sick. You sat with me and told me about your students, about the books you were reading, about life. You asked how I was feeling. You cared. Marcus called every few months, always about business, always rushed. Diane sent cards, generic ones she probably had her assistant order. Thomas stopped pretending years ago. But you, Elena, you showed up. Not because you wanted something, but because you thought I might be lonely, because you're a good person. The only one of my children who actually is. I was hard on you. Too hard. I see that now. I was angry that you chose a different path. Angry that you didn't want what I wanted. But the truth is, You were the only one brave enough to choose love over money, purpose over status. And I was too proud, too stupid, to tell you I was wrong. So I'm telling you now, this money isn't an apology. Money can't fix what I broke. But it's my way of saying what I couldn't say when I was alive. I saw you, Elena. I always saw you. And you were always worth more than all of them combined. There's one condition to this inheritance. Don't tell your siblings for 1 year. Let them live with what they said to you. Let them reveal themselves completely. Then, after a year, you can do whatever you want. Tell them, don't tell them, it's your choice. But know this, you were never the disappointment. You were always the one I was most proud of. I just didn't know how to say it. I love you, Elena. I'm sorry I didn't say it enough. Dad underscored the letter fell from my hands. I was sobbing. Full, broken sobs that shook my entire body. Mr. Morrison quietly handed me a box of tissues and said nothing. Just let me cry. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Time didn't exist anymore. When I could finally speak, my voice was raw. He really did this. He did. Mr. Morrison smiled gently, and he made me promise to tell you something else. Said, tell her she doesn't have to quit teaching. The money is so she never has to worry, not so she has to change. Fresh tears. God, would they ever stop? He knew you'd think that, Mr. Morrison continued. Knew you'd worry that money would change who you are, but he wanted you to know you can keep being exactly who you are. You just get to do it without fear now. I looked down at the documents, at my father's shaky signature, at proof that I wasn't invisible after all, that I never had been. Comment below if you've ever been wrong about someone, or if someone was wrong about you. Because I just learned that love doesn't always look the way we think it should. I sat in that office for 2 hours. Mr. Morrison walked me through every document, every account, every property deed, answered every question with patience I didn't deserve. My hands shook the entire time. This Vermont property, I said, staring at the deed. I don't understand. When did he buy this? 2.5 years ago. Right after your mother passed, Mr. Morrison pulled up photos on his computer. A small cottage, white with blue shutters, surrounded by trees. A lake in the distance. He told me you mentioned once that you'd always wanted to live somewhere quiet, somewhere with water and woods. He remembered, my throat closed. I had said that once, in passing. I didn't think he'd been listening. He'd been listening the whole time. There are a few legal formalities, Mr. Morrison explained, but everything is already in your name. The accounts will be accessible within 48 hours. The property is yours immediately. He paused. Your father made sure there would be no delays, no complications. He didn't want you to have to fight for this, unlike the will, where he made sure I'd have to sit there and be humiliated. He really wanted them to show who they were, I said quietly. He did, and he wanted you to see it clearly, without doubt. Mr. Morrison closed the folder. He told me something once, near the end. He said, the people who love you for who you are don't need an inheritance to prove it. And the people who only love what you can give them will show themselves the moment they think you have nothing. I thought about my siblings, about Diane's laugh, Marcus's smirk, Thomas's indifference. He'd been right. When I finally left that office, I felt like I was floating. Nothing felt real. I sat in my car in that parking garage and just stared at the steering wheel. $5 million. My father loved me. I mattered. After 34 years of feeling invisible, of being told I wasn't enough, of watching my siblings get everything while I got scraps and criticism, I'd been seen the whole time. I drove home in a daze, walked into my tiny apartment, looked around at my second-hand couch, my cheap coffee table, my textbooks and student papers. Nothing had changed. Everything had changed. My phone buzzed. Group chat. I'd forgotten I even had it unmuted. Diane, Marcus, did you finalize the Oakmont property transfer? Marcus, signed yesterday. Should be official by Monday. Thomas, investment accounts moved to my management firm. Already seeing better returns. They were dividing their spoils, living their upgraded lives, and they had no idea. I should have felt angry. Should have wanted to text them right then, send them a screenshot of my bank statement, watch them choke on their own cruelty. But I didn't feel anger. I felt ... sad. Sad that they'd never known our father the way I did in those final years. Sad that they'd turned love into a transaction and lost something real in the process. And maybe, underneath it all, I felt something else. Relief. Because I didn't have to try anymore. Didn't have to earn their respect or approval. Didn't have to prove I was worth something. I already was. That night, I pulled out Dad's letter again, read it 5 more times, traced my fingers over his handwriting, over the words, "I love you, Elena." He'd never said that when he was alive. Not once that I could remember. But he'd said it in the only way he knew how. The next morning was Sunday. I woke up early, made coffee, and sat on my balcony watching the sunrise. For the first time in months, I felt something strange. Peace. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Elena? It's Jennifer. From school. She sounded worried. I know it's the weekend, but I just... I wanted to check on you. You've seemed so distant lately, and I'm worried. Jennifer, my colleague, the only person who'd actually noticed I was drowning. I'm okay, I said. And for the first time, it wasn't a lie. Actually, I'm better than okay. Really? She sounded surprised. Did something happen? I thought about telling her. About the money, the letter, all of it. But something stopped me. My father's words, "Don't tell anyone for 1 year." Not because he wanted to punish my siblings, but because he wanted to see what would happen. How they'd treat me. How I'd grow without the weight of their judgment pressing down on me. I just... I had a realization, I said instead, about what really matters. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. Well, whatever it is, I'm glad. You deserve to be happy, Elena. You're one of the best people I know. After we hung up, I sat there thinking about her words. You're one of the best people I know. Not the richest, not the most successful, the best. That's what my father had seen too. Finally, I spent the rest of Sunday doing something I hadn't done in years planning. Actually planning a future beyond just surviving paycheck to paycheck. I didn't want to quit teaching. Dad was right about that. I loved my kids. Loved seeing their faces light up when something finally clicked. Loved being the safe adult in their lives when so many of them had chaos at home. But now I could breathe. Could maybe get a better apartment? Could help students who needed supplies their parents couldn't afford? Could stop lying awake at night wondering if I'd have enough for rent. Freedom. That's what he'd given me. Not just money, freedom. On Monday, I went to work with a secret burning in my chest. I smiled at my students, helped them with their math problems, ate lunch with Jennifer and listened to her talk about her weekend. Normal life. Except nothing was normal anymore. That evening my phone buzzed. Marcus. Not the group chat. A direct message. Marcus. Hey, we're having dinner Friday to discuss the estate distribution. You should come. Might be good for you to see how these things work. Educational. Educational. Like I was a child who needed to learn about money from my big, successful brother. My first instinct was rage, but then I stopped. Reread his message? He had no idea. None of them did. I thought about my father's condition. 1 year of silence. 1 year of letting them reveal who they truly were. This was just the beginning. I typed back, I'll try to make it. Thanks for including me. Let him think I was grateful. Let them all think I was still the poor, pathetic little sister who needed their charity. 1 year. I could do 1 year. And then I'd decide what they deserved to know. I fell asleep that night thinking about my father's face. The way it looked when I'd tell him about my students. How sometimes, just sometimes, the corner of his mouth would twitch. Almost a smile. He'd been proud of me, all along. I just wish he'd told me sooner. But maybe this was better. Maybe this way, I'd never doubt it. Never wonder if he meant it. He'd put it in writing. In money. In property. In a trust that took 3 years to build. That kind of love doesn't lie. If this story is touching something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes, the people who love us show it in ways we don't expect. The week passed in a strange blur. I taught my classes, graded papers, attended meetings. On the outside, I was the same Elena I'd always been. But inside, everything had shifted. I kept catching myself staring at nothing, thinking about the money sitting in accounts with my name on them. Money I hadn't touched, hadn't spent, wasn't even sure I wanted to. Because the money wasn't really the point, was it? The point was that my father saw me, chose me, loved me enough to spend 3 years quietly, systematically making sure I'd be okay after he was gone. While my siblings fought over businesses and properties, he'd been thinking about me. Friday came, the dinner Marcus had texted about. I almost didn't go. Spent 20 minutes sitting in my car outside the restaurant, some upscale steakhouse, where the cheapest entree cost more than my weekly grocery budget, debating whether I could stomach watching them celebrate their inheritance. But curiosity won, or maybe it was something darker. Maybe I wanted to see them, wanted to watch them play their parts, knowing what I knew. Inside, the hostess led me to a private room in the back. Of course, they'd reserved a private room. My siblings were already there. Marcus at the head of the table like he was hosting a board meeting. Diane scrolling through her phone. Thomas examining the wine list with the concentration of a surgeon. "Elena," Marcus said, standing, too enthusiastic. "Fake, you made it. Here, sit." He gestured to the chair furthest from him. Naturally. I sat, smiled, said nothing. "We ordered you water," Diane said, without looking up from her phone. "Figured you'd want to keep it simple." While they had wine glasses already filled. Expensive wine, probably. The kind they could afford now. The kind I could afford too. They just didn't know it. "Water's perfect," I said. "Thank you." A waiter appeared, took our orders. Marcus ordered the ribeye $48. Diane got the lobster tail. Thomas ordered something I couldn't even pronounce. I ordered a chicken Caesar salad, $18. Still more than I'd normally spend, but I couldn't bring myself to order anything expensive. Old habits. So, Marcus said once the waiter left, leaning back in his chair. "We wanted to update you on where things stand with Dad's estate. Keep you in the loop." "That's nice of you," I said quietly. "The properties are being transferred smoothly," Diane added, finally putting down her phone. "I've hired a management company for the commercial buildings. Should start seeing returns within the quarter, and the business is solid," Thomas said. "Dad set things up well. We're actually positioned to expand." They talked for 10 minutes straight. Numbers, projections, investment strategies. Using words I understood but pretending I didn't. Speaking slowly when they addressed me directly. Like I was a child who needed things, explained simply. I nodded, smiled. Let them talk. "It's a lot to manage," Marcus said, shaking his head. "Honestly, Elena, you're lucky you don't have to deal with any of this." "The stress alone must be terrible," I finished. "Having millions of dollars. I can't imagine." Diane's eyes flicked to me, sharp, trying to decide if I was being sarcastic. I kept my expression neutral, innocent. "Well," she said slowly, "it's not just about the money. It's about responsibility, legacy, things you wouldn't really under." She stopped herself. "Things that are complicated." "I'm sure," I said. The food came. We ate in awkward silence for a few minutes. I watched them, really watched them. Marcus cut his steak with precise movements, the way surgeons probably cut in operating rooms. Every action controlled, calculated. He'd always been like that. Even as kids. Diane ate her lobster delicately, pausing between bites to check her phone. A text, a smile, back to eating. She'd always needed external validation, needed to be seen, needed to win. Thomas barely tasted his food. He was already thinking ahead, planning his next move. Always 3 steps ahead. Never present, never here. And me? I was the one who actually tasted my food, who noticed the details, who was present for the moments that mattered. That's what Dad saw. Finally. So, Elena, Diane said suddenly, setting down her fork. How are you doing? You know, financially. The question hung in the air like smoke. I'm okay, I said carefully. Because if you need anything. Marcus jumped in, his voice dripping with false generosity. We're family. We can help. Thomas nodded. We could spot you some money, just to get by. I know teaching doesn't exactly pay well. They were performing, showing themselves how generous they were, how magnanimous. The rich siblings helping their poor, pathetic sister. Something hot flared in my chest. Anger. Real anger. But I swallowed it, smiled instead. That's really kind, I said. But I'm managing. Really? Are you sure? Diane pressed. Because there's no shame in needing help. God knows Dad didn't leave you anything to work with. She said it like she was sympathetic, like she hadn't laughed in that conference room. Just gratitude, Thomas added with a smirk. Hope that's paying your rent. Marcus shot him a look. Thomas? What? I'm just saying. I set down my fork, looked at each of them, one by one. Dad left me exactly what he thought I deserved, I said quietly. I'm at peace with that. The table went silent. Diane's expression shifted. Confusion. Maybe even guilt? For just a second. Well, Marcus said, clearing his throat. If you change your mind, the offer stands. Thank you, I said. And I meant it. Because in that moment, I understood exactly what my father had wanted me to see. They didn't actually want to help me. They wanted to feel superior, wanted to cement their position above me, wanted to make sure I knew and they knew that they had won. The rest of dinner passed in shallow conversation. Their trips planned, their purchases made, their lives expanding while they assumed mine stayed small. When the check came, Marcus grabbed it immediately. I've got this, he announced, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Thanks, Marcus, Diane said. You're too generous. Family, he replied, signing the receipt with a flourish. I said nothing, just watched him tip 15% exactly. Not 16, not 20, 15, precisely. Because generosity, even fake generosity, had its limits. Outside the restaurant, we stood under the valet awning. Diane's BMW was brought around first, then Thomas's Mercedes, then Marcus's Audi. My 12-year-old Honda came last. The valet looked almost apologetic, handing me the keys. Well, Diane said, already in her car, this was nice. We should do it again. We wouldn't. We all knew it. They drove away in their expensive cars, back to their expensive lives, convinced they knew exactly who they were and who I was. I sat in my Honda for a long moment, looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. $5 million sitting in accounts they didn't know existed. A house in Vermont they'd never heard of. A father who'd loved me more than all of them combined. And they had no idea. I started the car, drove home, and for the first time since that will reading, I laughed, really laughed, because they thought they'd won. They thought they'd gotten everything while I got nothing. But the truth was so much better than that. The truth was that I got everything that mattered. And they got exactly what they deserved: money they'd fight over, businesses they'd stress about, and an inheritance that proved their father knew them better than they knew themselves. 1 year, Dad had asked. 1 year of silence. 8 months to go. I could wait. Like this, if you've ever had the last laugh when people underestimated you. Because sometimes, silence is the most powerful response. Summer came. School ended, and for the first time in years, I didn't immediately pick up a summer job. I'd always worked tutoring, summer school, sometimes retail on weekends, anything to make ends meet. But this summer, I didn't have to. I sat on my balcony that first Saturday morning of vacation, coffee in hand, and just ... breathed. No alarm clock, no lesson plans, no stress about how I'd afford groceries next week. Freedom felt strange, almost guilty. My phone buzzed. Jennifer. Jennifer, beach day? A bunch of us from school are going. Say yes. I almost said no, old habit. But then I stopped myself. Why not? Me. Yes. What time? We spent the day on the shore, me, Jennifer, and 3 other teachers from school. We laughed. We swam. We ate overpriced boardwalk fries and didn't care. And for a few hours, I forgot about inheritances and secrets and siblings who thought I was worthless. I was just Elena, a teacher on summer break. A woman with friends who actually liked her. You seem different, Jennifer said as we walked along the water later that afternoon. Lighter, somehow. I feel different, I admitted. Good different? Yeah, good different. She smiled. I'm glad. You deserve good things, Elena. That phrase again. You deserve good things. I was starting to believe it. July arrived with heat that made the city feel like it was melting. I'd been avoiding the group chat for weeks, muting it, only checking when I had to. But one afternoon, curiosity got the better of me. I scrolled through messages I'd missed. Marcus. Property inspection revealed some issues at the Oakmont house. Going to cost $30,000 to fix. Diane. Are you kidding me? Dad said that place was in perfect condition. Thomas. He probably didn't know, or didn't care. Either way, we're splitting it 3 ways. Marcus. Actually, since it's technically my property now, I think. Diane. Oh, don't even start. Marcus. Thomas. Here we go. The messages devolved into an argument about who should pay for what, who was responsible, who deserved more consideration. I put my phone down and shook my head. This was what my father had wanted to avoid. He'd given them wealth, and all they could do was fight over it. Meanwhile, I had peace. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in months. I looked up the Vermont property online, found the listing photos Mr. Morrison had shown me. The cottage was beautiful, small, white with blue shutters, just like he'd said, surrounded by pine trees, a lake visible through the windows. You mentioned once that you'd always wanted to live somewhere quiet, somewhere with water and woods, he remembered. I'd said that during one of my visits. Dad had been having a bad day, tired, frustrated with his medication, angry at his body for failing him. I'd been trying to distract him, talking about dreams. Silly, impossible dreams. If you could live anywhere, he'd ask suddenly, where would it be? Somewhere quiet, I'd said without thinking, near water, with woods, somewhere I could hear myself think. He'd nodded, said nothing else, changed the subject. I thought he'd forgotten, but he hadn't forgotten anything. I stared at those photos for an hour, imagining myself there. Mornings on that porch with coffee, evenings watching the sunset over the lake, summers with books and silence and peace. Maybe someday, after the year was up, after I figured out what I was supposed to do with this gift. In August, I got a call from Marcus. Direct, not the group chat. Hey, Elena, got a minute? Sure, I said cautiously. Listen, I wanted to talk to you about something. He paused, cleared his throat. The business. Dad's business. We're expanding and we need someone to handle some administrative work. Filing, scheduling, basic stuff. I said nothing. It doesn't pay a ton, he continued. Maybe $35,000 a year, but it's steady. And you'd be working with family, you know? Thought it might be better than what you're doing now. Better than teaching. That's what he meant. I appreciate the offer, I said slowly. But I'm happy where I am. Come on, Elena. Be realistic. You could use the extra money. And it's family. I'm a teacher, Marcus. That's not just what I do, it's who I am. Silence. I could practically hear him trying to understand and failing. Okay, he said finally. But if you change your mind, let me know. The offer stands. Thanks. After we hung up, I sat there feeling something strange. Pity. I pitied Marcus. Pitied all of them. Because they'd never understand what it felt like to love something more than money. To find meaning in something that couldn't be bought or sold or divided among heirs. They thought I was the one who needed saving, but they were the ones living in cages. By September, I'd made a decision. It's a small one, but it felt huge. I was going to visit the Vermont house. Not to move there. Not yet. But just to see it. To stand in the space my father had created for me. To feel what he'd wanted me to feel. I told Jennifer I was taking a long weekend. Didn't tell her where, didn't tell anyone. I drove north on a Friday morning, 6 hours through highways and country roads, and finally up a winding path to a cottage that looked exactly like the photos. Better than the photos. The key was where Mr. Morrison said it would be, under a stone turtle by the front steps. A turtle. Dad knew I'd collected them as a kid. Another detail he'd remembered. Inside, the cottage smelled like pine and dust and potential. Hardwood floors. A fireplace. Windows that framed the lake like paintings. I walked from room to room slowly. A small kitchen. A living room with built-in bookshelves. 2 bedrooms, one with a view of the water. And in the master bedroom on the dresser, there was an envelope. My name, in my father's handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. _Elena, if you're reading this, you've come to see the house. I hoped you would. I bought this place because you deserve peace. You've spent your whole life taking care of others, your students, me, even your siblings when they didn't deserve it. This is your place to breathe, to rest, to be. You don't have to live here, but know it's here, waiting, whenever you're ready. You were always the strongest of my children. The only one who didn't need wealth to know your worth. That's why I gave it to you anyway. Love, Dad _ I stood in that bedroom, holding that letter, and cried until I couldn't cry anymore. He'd thought of everything, every detail, every possibility. He'd known I'd need proof, not just once, but over and over. Because a lifetime of feeling invisible doesn't disappear with one revelation. So he'd left me breadcrumbs, letters, gifts, little pieces of evidence that said, you mattered. You always mattered. I spent the weekend at that cottage, walked around the lake, sat on the porch, slept in that bedroom with windows open, listening to wind through pine trees. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely, utterly at home. Not because of the house, but because of what it represented. My father's love. Finally, undeniably, real. On the drive home Sunday evening, I thought about my siblings, about their fights over properties and percentages, their stress and their arguments and their hollow victories, and I thought about this cottage, this gift, this peace. 4 months left until the year was up. 4 months until I had to decide what to tell them, if anything. Part of me wanted to throw it in their faces, show them the accounts, the properties, the letter, watch them choke on their own cruelty. But another part of me, the part that had just spent a weekend in that cottage, feeling my father's presence in every carefully chosen detail, that part wanted something different. That part wanted to just let it go, because they'd never understand anyway. They'd see the money and miss the meaning. They'd count the dollars and never feel the love. And maybe that was punishment enough. Comment below. Would you tell them? Or would you keep the secret forever? Because I still don't know what I'm going to do. October came with falling leaves and cooling air. School was back in session. My classroom was full again, 23 fifth graders with big questions and bigger dreams. Some days were chaos. Some days were magic. Every day I remembered why I did this. During lunch one Wednesday, I sat in the teacher's lounge correcting math tests when my phone rang. Unknown number. Local area code. Hello? Ms. Carter? This is Rebecca Chun from Hartford Memorial Hospital. My stomach dropped. Hospital. Something was wrong. I'm calling about your brother, Marcus Carter. He's listed you as emergency contact. He's been admitted. What happened? My voice came out sharper than I intended. He collapsed at work. Possible heart attack. He's stable now, but he's asking for family. I was out the door before she finished talking. The hospital smelled like every hospital antiseptic and fear and two bright lights. I found Marcus's room on the 4th floor. Diane was already there, standing by the window, arms crossed. She looked up when I walked in. Elena. Surprise. Maybe relief. You came. Of course I came. I looked at the bed. Marcus looked small, pale. Iva's in his arm. Monitors beeping steadily. What did the doctors say? Stress-induced cardiac episode. Not a full heart attack, but close. Diane's voice cracked, just slightly. They said he's been pushing himself too hard, not sleeping, barely eating. I moved closer to the bed. Marcus's eyes were closed. He looked older than I remembered, tired. Lines on his face I hadn't noticed at that dinner. Where's Thomas? I asked. Business trip. Tokyo. He's trying to get a flight back. We stood there in silence. Sisters who barely knew each other anymore, united only by the man lying unconscious between us. I didn't know he was struggling, Diane said quietly. He always seemed so. In control. Maybe that was the problem, I said. Always trying to control everything. She looked at me. Really looked. You're different lately. I can't figure out what changed. Maybe I just stopped caring what you thought of me. It came out harsher than I meant, but it was true. Diane flinched, looked away. Fair enough. Marcus stirred. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused. Elena? I'm here. I moved to his bedside. Don't talk. Just rest. No. Need to tell you something. His voice was weak, raspy. I'm sorry. I froze. That dinner, what we said, how we treated you. He closed his eyes. You didn't deserve that. None of it. I was just I was angry at Dad for dying, for leaving this mess. And you were there and... Stop, I said softly. You don't have to do this now. Yes, I do. He opened his eyes again. They were wet. Because I'm lying here thinking... What if I died? What if I died and the last real conversation I had with my sister was me offering her a pity job? Diane made a sound. Almost a sob. I've been so focused on the business, on managing everything, on being the responsible one, Marcus's voice broke. I forgot what actually matters. And now I'm 42 years old having a heart attack because I can't stop working. Can't stop trying to prove I deserve what Dad left me. The words hit me like a truck. Trying to prove I deserve what Dad left me. He'd felt it too. The weight of being chosen. The fear of not being enough. Marcus, I said carefully, Dad didn't leave you that business because you had to earn it. He left it because he trusted you. Did he, though? Marcus looked at the ceiling, or did he just... run out of options? I was the oldest, the responsible one, the one who did what he wanted. He laughed bitterly. Maybe that's all I ever was. The obedient son. Diane sat down heavily in the visitor's chair. God, are we all this messed up? Probably, I said. We sat there, the three of us in that hospital room that smelled like disinfectant and regret. And for the first time in years, maybe decades, we weren't performing. We weren't competing. Weren't pretending. We were just ... there. I hated you, Diane said suddenly, looking at me. After that will reading. I hated you because even with nothing, you seemed fine. Like you didn't need any of it. And I realized I needed it. Needed the validation. Needed proof that I was. She stopped. That I was worth something. You are worth something, I said. The inheritance doesn't prove that. It just proves Dad had money. Then why does it feel like it matters so much? Her voice was small, younger than I'd ever heard it. I thought about the letter in my pocket, the one I'd been carrying since Vermont. My father's words. You were always the strongest of my children, the only one who didn't need wealth to know your worth. They did need it. That was the difference. And maybe that's why he'd given them the public inheritance, the one everyone could see, count, measure, because that's what they needed to feel valued, while I got the private one. The one that was about love, not validation. It matters because we let it matter, I said finally. But it doesn't have to. Marcus closed his eyes. I'm so tired, Elena. Tired of fighting with Thomas over percentages. Tired of managing properties I don't even like. Tired of pretending this is what I wanted. Then stop, I said simply. I can't just... Why not? Silence. Because... double quotes, he trailed off. I don't know. The heart monitor beeped steadily. Outside, someone walked past pushing a gurney. Life continuing while we sat in this small room confronting truths we'd avoided for years. I don't want to die like this, Marcus said finally. Alone in an office. Stressed about money I don't even need. He looked at me. How did you do it? How did you let it all go? I thought about lying. Thought about keeping my secret for 4 more months like Dad had asked. But Marcus was lying in a hospital bed. Diane was crying quietly in the corner. And I realized my father's condition wasn't about punishment. It was about protection. He wanted me to see who they really were. And I had. I'd seen their cruelty. But I'd also seen this. Their pain, their struggle, their own invisible wounds. I didn't let it go, I said carefully. I just stopped measuring my worth by Dad's standards. Or yours, or anyone's. But how? Diane asked. How do you just... stop caring? I didn't stop caring. I started caring about different things. I looked at them both. I care about my students. About showing up. About being present for moments that matter. Not moments that pay. Marcus made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. You sound like a greeting card. Maybe. But I'm not the one in the hospital. That landed hard. I saw it in his face. I'm sorry, I added quickly. That was... No. He shook his head. You're right. You're absolutely right. A nurse came in to check vitals. We went silent, 3 siblings pretending we weren't in the middle of breaking open years of dysfunction. When she left, Diane spoke. Elena, that job Marcus offered you... double quotes, I don't want it, I said firmly. I know, that's not what I'm saying. She twisted her hands together. I'm saying it was condescending. It was us trying to feel superior by pretending to help you. And I'm sorry, I stared at her. Diane never apologized. For anything. Thank you, I said quietly. We stayed until visiting hours ended. Thomas called, flight delayed, wouldn't make it until morning. Typical. As Diane and I walked to the parking garage together, she stopped suddenly. Elena, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you hate us? For that day? For how we treated you? I thought about it. Really thought. No, I said finally. I don't hate you. I'm sad for you. There's a difference. Sad for us? She looked confused. Yeah, because you got exactly what you thought you wanted. And you're still not happy. She opened her mouth, closed it. No argument came. We walked the rest of the way in silence. That night, I sat in my apartment holding my father's letter, the one from Vermont. You were always the strongest of my children. Maybe he was right. Not because I didn't hurt, not because rejection didn't wound me, but because I'd learned something they hadn't. That worth isn't inherited, it's chosen every day, in every small moment. And no amount of money could teach them that. 3 months until the year was up. But now, I wasn't sure it mattered anymore. Follow my story. Because what happens next changes everything I thought I knew about family, forgiveness, and what my father really wanted. November arrived cold and gray. Marcus was released from the hospital after 3 days. Doctor's orders: reduce stress, change diet, exercise, therapy. He texted the family chat that he was taking some time off from the business. Thomas responded with a thumbs-up emoji. That was it. Diane called me directly. Have you talked to Marcus? Not since the hospital. Why? He's different. Quiet. He's not answering my calls about the properties. It's like he just checked out. Maybe that's what he needs, I said. But we have decisions to make. Contracts. Thomas is already trying to take over everything and... She stopped. God, listen to me. My brother almost died and I'm worried about contracts. Diane, I know. I know how it sounds. A long pause. Elena, how did we become these people? I didn't have an answer for that. Thanksgiving came 2 weeks later. I'd planned to spend it alone, Chinese takeout and movie marathon, my usual routine. But Marcus texted, Marcus, hosting Thanksgiving at my place, small, just family, please come. Me, Thomas and Diane coming? Marcus, invited them. We'll see. But I'd really like you to be there. Something in his message felt different. Vulnerable. Real. Me. Okay, I'll come. Thanksgiving morning. I drove to Marcus's house, the Oakmont property, the one Dad had left him. I'd only been there once, years ago. It was exactly as I remembered. Massive, pristine, more like a museum than a home. Marcus answered the door himself. No staff, no catering. He wore jeans and a sweater. I'd never seen him in jeans. You came, he said, smiling. He looked lighter somehow. Come in. Fair warning, I'm cooking. Or attempting to. Inside, the house smelled like turkey and something burning. Is that? The rolls. Yeah. Already destroyed one batch. He laughed. Actually laughed. Turns out I have no idea how to cook. Diane arrived 20 minutes later, carrying wine and store-bought pies. I figured you'd need backup, she said, hugging Marcus. Then, awkwardly, she hugged me too. Thomas never showed. Business trip, again. The 3 of us spent the afternoon in Marcus's enormous kitchen, trying to salvage Thanksgiving dinner. It was a disaster. The turkey was dry, the mashed potatoes were lumpy, the green beans were overcooked. It was perfect. We sat at the dining room table, just 3 of us in a room meant for 20 and 8, our terrible meal. And somewhere between the dry turkey and the burnt rolls, something shifted. Dad would hate this, Diane said suddenly. Hate what? Marcus asked. This, us cooking, the food being bad. He always hired caterers. Everything perfect. Everything controlled. Marcus set down his fork. Yeah. He would. Good, I said. They both looked at me. Good that he'd hate it. Because this is real. This is us actually being together, not performing being together. We're eating terrible food in a mansion. This is insane. Completely insane, Diane agreed, laughing too. And then we were all laughing, and I couldn't remember the last time the 3 of us had laughed together. After dinner, we moved to the living room. Marcus started a fire. We sat with more wine, the kind of comfortable silence that only comes after big walls fall down. I've been thinking, Marcus said finally, about the business, about all of it. And? Diane asked. I'm stepping back, selling my shares to Thomas. Let him have it. Let him stress about it. Diane's eyes widened. Are you serious? Completely. The heart attack was a wake-up call. He looked at me. Elena, you said something at the hospital. About measuring worth. I can't stop thinking about it. What will you do? I asked. I don't know yet. But that's okay. For the first time in my life, I'm okay with not knowing. He smiled. Maybe I'll figure out what I actually want instead of what I'm supposed to want. Diane was quiet, staring into her wine glass. What about you? I asked her gently. I keep thinking about what you said, about being sad for us. She looked up. You were right. I got everything I thought I wanted. And I'm miserable. I work 80 hours a week. I haven't been on a date in 3 years. I can't remember the last time I did something just because I enjoyed it. So change it, Marcus said. It's not that simple. Why not? I interrupted. Why isn't it that simple? She opened her mouth, closed it. I don't know. Because we were taught it's not, Marcus said. We were taught that worth equals achievement. That rest equals weakness. That enough is never enough. Dad taught us that, Diane whispered. Yeah, Marcus agreed. He did. We sat with that truth. Heavy. Painful. Real. But he taught you something different, Diane said, looking at me. Didn't he? I thought about the letters, the cottage, the secret inheritance. All of it designed to show me I was enough exactly as I was. Yeah, I said softly. He did. How? Marcus asked. How did you get the different lesson? And there it was. The moment. The choice. I could keep the secret. 3 more months. That's all Dad had asked. Or I could tell them now. Not to hurt them. Not to win. But to maybe ... free them. I pulled out my phone. Opened my photos. Found the picture I'd taken of Dad's letter from Vermont. Because, I said slowly, he gave me something you didn't know about. I handed Marcus my phone. He read. His face changed. Confusion. Shock. Disbelief. He passed the phone to Diane. She read. Tears started falling before she finished. I don't understand, Marcus said. What is this? I told them. Everything. The meeting with Mr. Morrison. The trust. The accounts. The Vermont cottage. The letters. All of it. They listened in complete silence. When I finished, Diane was crying openly. Marcus stared at the fire like he was seeing it for the first time. $5 million, Marcus said finally. He left you $5 million and told us you got nothing. Not nothing, I corrected. Gratitude. That's what the will said. But why? Diane asked. Why hide it? Why make us think? She stopped. Understanding dawned on her face. Oh God, he wanted us to show you who we were. And we did, Marcus said bitterly. We laughed at you, mocked you, offered you pity jobs. He wanted me to see the truth, I said, and he wanted to protect me from you. From this. I gestured around. From fighting over money, from measuring love in dollars. So he gave you everything, Diane said. The money, yes, but also freedom, peace, a way out. And he gave you the prison, Marcus said quietly, looking around his mansion. He gave us exactly what we deserved. The thing we thought we wanted, and the burden that came with it. We sat with that for a long time. Are you angry at him? Diane asked me. For the game? For making you sit through that will reading? I thought about it. No, because he was right. I needed to see who you were when you thought I had nothing. And you needed to see who you were too. We failed, Marcus said. Yeah, I agreed. You did. It should have felt good vindication, victory, proof. But it didn't. It just felt sad. But you're different now, I added, both of you. Something changed. The heart attack changed things, Marcus said. No, Diane interrupted. We changed things. We chose to change. The heart attack was just the excuse. She was right. Can I ask you something? Marcus said. Why are you telling us now? You could have waited. Could have kept the secret forever. Made us suffer. Because suffering wasn't the point, I said. And I think Dad would understand. He wanted me to see the truth. I did. But I also see that you're trying. That you're waking up. and maybe that's enough. Diane reached across and took my hand. I'm sorry, Elena, for everything, for all of it. Me too, Marcus said. I'm so sorry. I squeezed Diane's hand. I know. We talked until midnight. About Dad. About childhood. About the people we'd become and the people we wanted to be. Before I left, Marcus walked me to my car. That cottage in Vermont, he said. Do you go there? Sometimes. It's peaceful. I'm glad you have that. A place that's just yours. He paused. And Elena? For what it's worth, IT was right. About you being the strongest. I see it now. I hugged him. He held on tight. Thank you, he whispered, for telling us. You didn't have to. Maybe I did, I said. Maybe we all needed to finally be honest. I drove home feeling lighter. Not because I'd revealed the secret, but because I'd chosen to. On my terms. For the right reasons. Dad had given me a gift. Not just money, but choice. The choice to be generous when I could have been cruel. The choice to forgive when I'd earned the right to hate. That was the real inheritance. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the greatest power is choosing how we respond to people who hurt us. December came with the first snow. I stood at my classroom window during lunch break, watching white flakes drift past the glass. My students had been wild this morning, holiday energy, sugar from early Christmas cookies, the chaos of anticipation. I loved every second of it. My phone buzzed. Diane. Diane, coffee tomorrow? I have something to tell you. Me. Everything okay? Diane, more than okay. Just, coffee? Me. Sure. 10 a.m.? Diane. Perfect. We met at a small cafe near the hospital where she worked. She was already there when I arrived, hands wrapped around a mug, staring out the window. Hey, I said, sliding into the seat across from her. She looked up, smiled, but it was different, softer, more genuine than I'd seen in years. I quit, she said. I blinked. What? The hospital. I gave my notice yesterday. 4 weeks and I'm done. Diane, that's huge. What are you gonna do? She laughed. Honestly, I have no idea. Travel maybe? Sleep? Read books that aren't medical journals. Figure out who I am when I'm not Dr. Carter. She paused. Marcus, stepping away from the business, made me realize I can do this too. I don't have to keep running on a treadmill I never wanted to be on. I'm proud of you, I said. Her eyes filled with tears. Really? Really? We talked for 2 hours. She told me about the moment she realized she'd built her entire life around external validation. About how exhausting it was. About how scared she was to step into the unknown. But you did it, she said. You've been living in the unknown your whole adult life, teaching for almost nothing, following your heart instead of a paycheck, and you're happy. Actually happy, most days, I admitted. It's not perfect. But it's mine. That's what I want, she said. Something that's mine. Before we left, she hugged me tight. Thank you, Elena, for being honest with us, for giving us a chance to be better. You gave yourself that chance, I said. I just told you a story. Christmas week, I got a letter in the mail. Thomas. I almost threw it away unopened. Thomas hadn't called, hadn't texted, hadn't acknowledged Thanksgiving or anything that had happened since. But curiosity won. Inside was a single page, handwritten. His writing was messy, rushed. Elena, Marcus told me everything. About the inheritance. About Dad's letters. All of it. I'm not going to apologize. I don't know how, and I'm not sure I mean it yet. I'm still angry at Dad, at you, at myself, I don't know. But I wanted you to know I'm thinking about it, about what kind of person I've become. About whether the business is worth what it's costing me. I don't have answers yet. Maybe I never will. But I'm thinking, Thomas, it wasn't much, but it was something. Maybe that was all any of us could do. Keep thinking, keep trying, keep choosing to be better than we were yesterday. On Christmas morning, I woke up in my apartment to silence and snow and peace. I made coffee, sat on my balcony wrapped in blankets, watched the city wake up slowly. My phone rang, FaceTime. Marcus, I answered. His face filled the screen, smiling, genuine. Behind him I could see Diane. They were together. "Merry Christmas," Marcus said. "Merry Christmas," I replied. "We're at my place, made breakfast." Well, Diane made breakfast. I supervised. He grinned. "We wanted to see you. Even if just on a screen, I'm glad you called." We talked for 20 minutes about nothing important, about everything important, about the snow, about Diane's travel plans, about Marcus considering teaching business classes at the community college. "Not for money," he said, "just to do something meaningful, something that matters." Before we hung up, Diane leaned into frame. "Elena, thank you for everything, for being you." I smiled. Back at you. After the call ended, I sat there feeling something unfamiliar. Gratitude. Real, deep, uncomplicated gratitude. Not for the money, not for the cottage, not for being right or winning or proving anything, but for this, for broken relationships beginning to heal, for siblings trying to be better, for the mess and the pain and the slow, hard work of becoming people who could actually love each other. That's what Dad had really given me. Not wealth, not vindication, but the space to choose, the freedom to forgive, the power to break cycles. That afternoon, I did something I'd been planning for weeks. I drove to Dad's grave, first time since the funeral. I brought flowers, white roses, his favorite. The cemetery was quiet. Snow covered everything like a blanket. I found his headstone and stood there for a long time, just looking at his name carved in granite. "Hey, Dad," I said finally. "I know you can't hear me. Or maybe you can. I don't know how any of this works." I knelt down, placed the flowers. I told them about the inheritance, about your letters. "I know you said to wait a year, but I think you'd understand." They needed to know, not to hurt them, but to free them. A bird landed nearby, watched me with curious eyes. "Marcus almost died, you know? Heart attack. He's okay now, but it scared him. Scared all of us. Made us realize we were living your dream instead of ours." I smiled. "Well, except me. I was already living mine. You made sure of that. The wind picked up, scattering snow. I'm not angry anymore. About the will reading, about the game you played. I understand why you did it. You wanted to protect me. You wanted them to see themselves clearly." I paused, and it worked. We're all different now. Better, maybe. Trying, at least. I stood up, brushed snow off my knees. "Thank you, Dad, for seeing me when I felt invisible. For loving me in the only way you knew how. For teaching me that worth isn't something someone else can give you or take away. It's something you choose." I touched the cold stone. I'm choosing it now. Every day. I'm choosing to be enough exactly as I am. I started to leave, then stopped. Turned back. "Oh, and Dad? The cottage is beautiful. I'm thinking about spending summers there. Maybe write a book. Maybe just sit on that porch and breathe. Either way, thank you for giving me a place to land." I walked back to my car feeling lighter than I'd felt in months, maybe years. New Year's Eve, I sat in my apartment with Chinese takeout and sparkling cider, watching the countdown on TV. At 11:59, my phone buzzed. Group chat. Marcus had added us all, back even Thomas. "Marcus, new year, new start. Love you all. Diane, love you too. All of you. Thomas, yeah, love you. Me, love you. Here's to better." At midnight, fireworks exploded outside my window, the city celebrating. Moving forward. Beginning again. I thought about the year that had passed. The pain. The revelation. The slow, difficult healing. I thought about my father. Gone. but somehow more present now than he'd been when alive. I thought about my siblings, imperfect and trying, just like me. And I thought about myself, Elena Carter, teacher, daughter, sister, woman with $5 million who still lived in a modest apartment because this was home. Because money didn't change who I was at my core. That was Dad's final gift. Not the inheritance itself, but the knowledge that I didn't need it to be whole. I'd already been whole. I just needed to see it. Spring came. I took a sabbatical from teaching, first time in my career. Spent April and May at the Vermont cottage, writing, thinking, healing. Marcus visited once. We kayaked on the lake. Didn't talk about money or business or the past, just paddled in comfortable silence, two people learning how to just be. Diane sent postcards from Portugal, from Greece, from Morocco. Finding myself, she wrote on the back of one, "Turns out I'm here after all." Thomas never visited, but he texted sometimes, brief messages. "Hope you're good. Weather's nice." Small things, baby steps. That was okay. Healing wasn't linear. Sometimes it was messy. Sometimes it took time. In June, I went back to teaching. Same school, same modest salary. Same kids with big hearts and bigger questions. Same Elena. But different somehow, freer, lighter, more myself than I'd ever been. On what would have been Dad's 79th birthday, I drove to the cemetery again. This time, Marcus and Diane came with me. We stood at his grave together, three siblings who'd been strangers pretending to be family, now family learning to be real. "I think he'd be proud of us," Diane said quietly. "Maybe," Marcus replied. "Or maybe he'd say, we still have work to do." "Both can be true," I said. We stood there in the summer sun, saying goodbye and hello and thank you all at once. Then we went to lunch, at a diner. Not a steakhouse. We ordered burgers and fries and split a milkshake. We laughed about nothing. We talked about everything. And somewhere between the terrible coffee and the good conversation, I realized this was the inheritance. Not the money in my account, not the cottage, not the properties or the stocks or any of it, but this family. Messy, complicated, beautiful family, learning how to love each other honestly. That was what Dad had really left us. He'd just hidden it behind a game, behind silence, behind secrets. Because sometimes the most precious gifts have to be unwrapped slowly. Sometimes they have to be earned. And sometimes they're worth more than we ever imagined. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever felt invisible or underestimated, if you've ever had to choose between bitterness and grace, share this. Share it with someone who needs to know that being seen, being loved, being enough, ... Sometimes those gifts come in the most unexpected ways. Thank you for being here, for listening to my story, for reminding me that I was never alone in this. Sometimes the people who inherit the most money are the poorest. And sometimes the people who inherit nothing receive everything. I know which one I am now, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.